Welcome, everybody, to a new episode on John Webster Film. Today is a bit different because I've already tackled my subject once before, and that is the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. But I have a very special guest today, Cliff Broadway, who is also known as Quickbeam. If you have ever been to the OneRing.net, I think you know exactly who he is. Cliff, you've been immersed in all things Tolkien for a really long time. Why don't you tell the folks a bit about what you do?
Thank you, John, for having me here. This is really gracious to be invited. It is so cool to be here because this is my first opportunity to talk with the audience of Thra, to the Jim Henson audience that I'm so close to with the Tolkien audience, obviously. So this is now a wonderful overlap, in our fandom. It's just great to be here. And hi, everybody. There's a 20-year history for an all-volunteer website for fans, and it's a little different than notable Star Wars or Harry Potter fan websites. In specific, that it's just been a volunteer org, and all the fans have been doing it for a couple of decades. Myself, one of the lead writers, and I host a lot of events at the conventions that they have for rings-related things all around the world. I do a lot of events, and I wrote and produced this documentary film, Ringers, Lord of the Fans, which is a film that we made in 2003 that covers Western popular culture having a big response to J.R.R. Tolkien. So you'll excuse me for having a couple of crickets in the bat cave. I'm sorry about that. But there's in my world, it's always been looking at a generational scope of fandom, because J.R.R. Tolkien has perhaps more notably than other authors of the late 20th century managed to become a generational artist, where his masterworks are handed down through generations to young readers, who then grow up and then pass them to their sisters and cousins and children when they have them on their own. And Jim Henson, absolutely, Jim Henson is also a generational artist who is lovingly handed to a next generation of fans. So here we are talking about the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. And to be honest, I'm 51, the big old 5-1, and Bilbo Baggins did not go on his adventure with Gandalf and the dwarves until he was 50 years old, and he missed his birthday when he was on his adventure, riding the barrels out of the Elven King's halls in Mirkwood and taking the ride with the dwarves and the barrels to Lake Town, and he completely missed his birthday, 51. So I'm ready for an adventure again with Thra, and lo and behold, here we are. After I was an original fan of the 1982 film that came out when I was just a kid. Maybe I was 12 years old or something, maybe 13. And now, all these years later, another generation of fans introduced to the magnificence of these characters and the powerful storytelling and the beautiful creativity in the world of Thra. And I find it interesting. We can talk about the parallels all day and all night. We can talk about these things because it is very similar to me to see this relationship between Lord of the Rings and Hobbit Tolkien fans, and then you jump 20 or 30 years later. In the case of the Dark Crystal, we went from 1982 all the way to 2019 before we saw it again. That's such a huge gap. But this happens, and I see the parallels really clearly. I don't know if you feel the same.
Yeah, it's really great to hear you say that you were there. You experienced the Dark Crystal at such a young age with the original film, and I'm just going to really quickly
here's my original. I bought this. I got in trouble in junior high school all the time for ignoring my schoolwork. Was reading this. I had this written by A.C.H. Smith, at the request of Henson himself, And here I was ignoring my chemistry books or whatever, and I was there. Yeah, it was great.
And here's the generational gap. He's holding an original copy of the novelization, and here I am with my the latest iteration, which I bought, which I've only gotten to read a little bit of so far, but I love it because it dives into so much that I think the film wasn't able to. Yeah,
it's wonderful. Let's see if there's a new copy on the back of your book. Read me the back cover. Is it the same as mine?
It's very little.
I've got a whole. I have a novella.
Yeah, no, it's not that. It's like a little blurb at the bottom.
So here's what happened. This comes out because I had to make this. Inside the center of the book was all the color photos, some film stills, and they all fell out of the glue. The glue became dry, and the color photos fell out. So I made my own little piece of paper, and this is it. Oh, do you believe that? I traced that, and I made this myself.
That is wonderful.
And inside were all these beautiful color photos and stills. And I don't know if your edition has any of these, but here we are.
Of course it doesn't.
Skeksil at the Wall of Destiny, because this was like a huge marketing piece. Right up to spoilers. Spoilers. Just in case you never saw the film or never read the story, the ultimate spoiler right here. And it was glued in the middle of the book. And it's so funny I still have this. It's hilarious. I still have this. John, it's so good to have this familiarity with you and to talk about Thra.
One of the
collectively,
things one of the things that I noticed yesterday, we did a test just to make sure everything would be okay for the stream, and it didn't really take long. I think before you and I discovered that we really do share some sensibilities in common, and obviously we have two very big interests in Tolkien and the Dark Crystal. So really no surprise there. But no, again, it's really funny because your fandom goes all the way back to the film, and I'm just going to pop up the original poster right there so everybody can see. It's a beauty. I love that poster.
That is one of the more interesting images by the famous movie poster artist Amsel. Amsel in the 70s was the guy who was doing Bette Midler album covers and doing incredible pop artwork. And then Spielberg got him to do, most famously, the one-sheet artwork for Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
And then he did this too, right after that. He's really famous. You've seen Amsel artwork. He was a legend.
Yeah, I know that when they released the 4K a couple of years ago, I was really pleased to see them using this artwork. And even though I don't have it on hand at the moment, I actually have a beautiful Steelbook edition that Best Buy put out. And it's really nice when studios go back and use the original artwork for stuff, because very often they don't. Okay, guys, looks like I just lost Cliff, but hopefully he'll be back in a second. It's funny because Amy, maybe Steven sabotaged us because he's jealous of a new bromance. And I'm alluding, of course, to my co-host Steven Stark. We do another stream called Here Be Dragons with our other co-host Nessie, and it's kind of a running joke amongst our audience that Steven and I are basically a couple, and we have our bromance. So you might see that alluded to, but
that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. Well, no.
what I was saying was that, your love of it goes all the way back to the original film, and for me, it's my love of Dark Crystal is fairly recent, and it's come about because of Age of Resistance, and so it's, as you said, it's a generational thing, and I feel like a whole lot of new fans have been swept along now in this magnificent creation of Jim Henson and Brian Froud, and it's unfortunate that the whole reason we're doing this stream is because there was some bad news within the past couple weeks that Netflix decided not to renew the series. And I'm actually going to go ahead and read a bit of
you're the king of understatement, John.
Yeah,
you're the
press
king of understatement.
The press release that came out, Lisa Henson said, "We can confirm that there will not be an additional season of the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. We know fans are eager to learn how this chapter of the Dark Crystal saga concludes, and we'll look for ways to tell that story in the future. Our company has a legacy of creating rich and complex worlds that require technical innovation, artistic excellence, and masterful storytelling. Our history also includes productions that are enduring, often finding and growing their audience over time and proving again and again that fantasy and science fiction genres reflect eternal messages and truths that are always relevant." Yeah, even though there's a glimpse of hope in that message that obviously they will look for a way to continue the story in some fashion in the future, it doesn't mask the heartbreak that a lot of us, I think, were feeling. And this was dragged out a long time because we've been hanging on whether or not the show is going to be renewed for an entire year now. And it just feels like it's almost, and the timing sucked with the Emmy win. And then a couple days later, the announcement came, and then it was like right before Jim Henson's birthday. I mean, how were you feeling when you heard it?
I was shocked. I was shocked that they kept it secret for so long because they knew. They knew before they won the Emmy that they were not going to be renewed, that they didn't want to spoil it for everybody. And I think that when I say they, I mean the producers and the Henson Company and, of course, the cast. I've actually met Victor Yared, the performer who does Hup and several other characters, when he did a performance here in Los Angeles. And we have a potential future booking where I'm going to interview him, hopefully in the coming months, for our show on the OneRing.net. But it is kind of gracious, kind of beautiful and gracious that Victor and the voice actors and the puppeteers and all the other craftspeople who worked so hard in making that, and of course our friends J.M. Lee and the writers of the other books and other items, they all kept it quiet. And they knew that they were not going to get renewed, but they wanted at least our fandom to have a moment of peace and celebration for one day, just for one day. And I think the timing of it is most easily explained that Netflix was ready to blow the news and get the headlines out early, and Netflix probably didn't care. And I've got a sneaking feeling, I might be wrong on this, but I have a feeling that Lisa Henson and Javier and Louis Leterrier and everybody, they probably all got together and talked about it and said, please, Netflix, can we let the fans know later after the Emmys are over? Just please let them know later. That way we can at least have a moment in the sun, because it would have appeared 30 times more ironic if they had been canceled and then a week later won the Emmy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that. I don't know.
Permit me a wild speculation. Speculation.
Do you prefer it that way? I mean, I feel like I almost would have wanted to know beforehand, because it did feel like the Emmy win gave us hope.
Well, Well, yeah,
You
that's
know,
equally the same. Yeah.
and then it felt like it was sort of the rug was pulled out from under us, you know?
Hmm. Well, maybe,
So,
maybe so. I mean, I just kind of thought that, well, let's keep in mind that Netflix doesn't care
yeah.
about their relationship with the fans. Their relationship with the fandom, they do not care. The people who care are Louis Leterrier and Javier Grillo Marx and Louis Leterrier, J.M. Lee, and Vivian, the writers, the performers, and Victor, and Kenneth Clash. Everybody, those are the people who care about the fandom, especially the Henson family, because as we know, this is a legacy intellectual property. It's not just, okay, here's an intellectual property. It's Twilight, or it's some other popular thing like Percy Jackson, or whatever. This is like Tolkien. This is where you're dealing with the Henson property, the Dark Crystal, in a legendary way. It's totally different. So keeping in mind, my theory is that Netflix didn't care. And so I'm assuming that the news was driven by advance notice. And I know that they all knew ahead of time. They knew about the Emmy win about, I think, 48 hours ahead of time, maybe a couple of days before the Emmys. They knew because that allowed them to stage a camera thank you video, because they automatically play that, and that was not live. That was not live. That was pre-recorded.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got a feeling that, and I maybe I do prefer it, thinking that the fans were given a moment just for one day, just like the David Bowie song, just to be heroes, just for one day. I just think it's a small grace that may have been granted to us, and maybe I'm nuts for thinking this, but my resentment towards Netflix for mishandling the property is kind of a weird ambivalent state, because we also have to be aware of being grateful that Netflix would bother to do the damn thing in the first place. So on one hand, I'm torn between thank you, Netflix, for having faith in the property and letting the producers and the creators of the show and the showrunners, thank you for having the wisdom to stay out of the way and let Louis do his thing with the Froud family, especially letting Toby come and help his father and his mom complete some of the designs and the physical works and sculpting that needed to be done. It is so impressive to me that Netflix did the smart thing. And the smart thing was give them all that money, step back, let them go to England and do their magic, which is the Henson way. And then suddenly they lack that wisdom. And on the opposite coin, I'm torn into this resentment feeling that I have about how could you do that? How could you willingly go to, release all these other controversial products on your streaming platform, things that make terrible, terrible headlines and really turns everybody off. And Netflix all of a sudden loses a lot of stock and their stocks go down. And then people are bailing and like an exodus, if that is the proper word, of people subscribing from Netflix because of how upset they are with that controversial content. And so Netflix is willing to do that. But when they handle their business, they're going to take something like a wholesome, beautiful piece of art, like even though it might be dark and ghoulish, which is part of the necessity of the storytelling, but this is one of the most imaginative and wholesome and important pieces of modern fantasy narrative. It's not just, and it is a legacy property. It's not just a one and done. It is not just a one and done. And here Netflix seems to have abandoned the original wisdom they had. And the only thing that comes to mind is that dialogue between Gandalf and Saruman, where he realizes his treachery and says, "Since when did Saruman the Wise abandon reason for madness?"
Yeah.
And this is how I feel. I mean, it's kind of like Saruman used to be such a good guy. We saw the Hobbit films. We know that Saruman was the leader of the White Council. He was one of the most powerful wizards to help the free peoples of Middle-earth. And he helped the Numenorians. He helped, after the Numenorians, he helped the struggling foundational kingdoms of Gondor, and he helped the other wizards, the blue wizards, and Gandalf and Radagast, and they are also Alatar and Palando, the other wizards, and they were helping Galadriel and all the free peoples do the right thing. So there's Netflix as the good Saruman the White, and then suddenly something happens, and Netflix suddenly goes, and what did they do? Did they look at their Palantir or something and get corrupted by some influence from Mordor? I don't know. But now Netflix has become, in my eyes, like traitorous to their own original faith that they had put in the Dark Crystal in the first place. Because they're willing to put other garbage on their platform that everybody hates. Everybody universally is upset with them. And yet they remove something so valuable and is such a proud crown jewel of what they've achieved in terms of artistry, storytelling, and it wasn't a failure. I mean, maybe they didn't get the massive ratings of, Stranger Things, season 2, which kind of took over the consciousness of everybody for a wide space of time. And maybe they didn't get the ratings of The Tiger King. Okay, so the Dark Crystal was there, and it was really popular anyways, but it's something that is a legacy thing that will continue to attract people, like reading The Hobbit or reading The Lord of the Rings. It will continue to bring many, many people to Netflix in appreciation for doing it. And so I really don't understand the wisdom. There's my opinion.
Yeah, my whole thing was, you take on the Dark Crystal, you can't really, which is, has a cult following, but is not a guaranteed, gonna bring in the biggest numbers you've ever seen type of thing. They had to know that going into this. And
yes, it was a niche. It was a niche fandom at the time, but then decades later it expanded and it expanded, and the comic books, especially the creation myths, were wildly popular. And then they realized, by looking at those sales numbers of what Archaea Publishing had, Netflix realized, oh geez, this fandom has been amplified over time. That was why they rolled the dice in the first place. Forgive me for interrupting, but
yeah, and no, it's just, the thing that drives me crazy is because the Henson Company went to them with an idea for an animated series. And it was Netflix who came back and said, we should do this with puppets.
Well, you saw how bad that CG stuff was.
Yeah, I mean, it just wasn't the Dark Crystal. So, and it's the fact that they had the sort of, they knew the right way to do it, and credit to them for taking that on and allowing the creators to do something that, as I was saying to you yesterday, stands, right there with the film as far as being, as magnificent an accomplishment, and, has that spirit, and in a lot of ways went beyond.
Easily.
Enough so that
Easily.
even for me, someone who certainly admired the original film, but I was not like a diehard fan, but through Age of Resistance, I became a fanatic. And so credit to them for allowing that to happen and saying, yeah, we want you to do it this way. But it doesn't match up with then the decision to torpedo it after one season. It just
no, it doesn't.
It just, and it's funny because it's been about 2 weeks now since the announcement, and but as I called it before we started, it still feels like an open wound, and I think it's going to feel that way, because it's such a magnificent achievement. I was rewatching the series in preparation for the stream, and just I continued to be blown away by like this type of thing does not happen. It's both in the artistry, which is very unique, because of the puppetry and the scale of it, but the story has so much heart as well. And on a storytelling level, it's a masterpiece. It's a 10-part masterpiece that I would think anybody looking at this, I would think that for a company, it would make sense to continue this on. Like I get the money thing, but in every other way, aside from the Netflix algorithms, this was a resounding success.
That's why it was the talk of the town. Even people who don't watch it would try it, and they'd say, you know what, I had to check that out. Here in Los Angeles, there are people who I know who would never go near it, and they watched it. It was the talk of the town, really.
Yeah, because the audiences loved it, and the critics loved it. It just won an award at the Emmys. It seems like something that you would want to see through just for the sake of what it does for your reputation as a company, if nothing else.
Well said. Well said.
And especially since Netflix has been having some difficulties in that regard. It just seems like so it's just really frustrating.
Yeah. John, I love you, man. You're wonderful. Here's where the rubber meets the road. It is about two dance partners, art and commerce. Art and commerce dance together in a strange rhythm. They are very strange dance partners, but they are in this society that is built on, you as an artist are, sometimes actually judged on the quality of your art. You're also judged on how many units you moved off the shelves. It's a weird thing. And that might tie us back into a more hopeful bent in the conversation where we can say fan influence on buying the products and buying all the books and buying all the wonderful board games. And, okay, say what you will about the game design, still the miniatures are really cool. We painted them. See, but you can talk with your wallet. The fans are in a position to talk with their wallet, in position of, here comes Christmas, and what am I going to get for that voracious reader, my niece? It's her, it's her favorite thing to read stuff like this. You can get all of those wonderful J.M. Lee paperback books, perfect, inexpensive Christmas gifts. And there are people who are collectors, and they're out for it like I am, trying to get, this limited edition. Yeah. See, you've got the hardcovers, don't you?
Yeah, and this is
some of the collectors. Even the collectors can help move the marketplace.
And I do want to mention this for people who are watching who are mourning the series right now and saying, I want more of that. Get these books if you don't have them, because they take place during the same time as the series, but there's characters who were just hinted at in the series who are who get to shine in the limelight of these books. And the story is a little bit different from what's in the show, but it really does just give you such an in-depth view of a lot of the stuff that's in the series. So I definitely, if you haven't picked these up, you've got to. There's four in the series. So just, I can't say that enough. Get it. And you're right.
I agree. And one additional thing, add to that list that you must purchase. Every Dark Crystal fan must get the Creation Myths. There are 3 volumes of the Creation Myths. Would you agree that is one additional thing that's a must? Oh, I'm glad you have it. You have it.
Yeah, I do have it.
Good.
Just not
good.
To me.
Because mine is on the other side of the library. I have a library in my living room, which is way over there.
Here we go. I have a beautiful hardcover edition.
Oh, me too. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's And
That's
this
great
is the
stuff.
thing. I mean, this gives so much history of Thra, and
Hmm.
you know,
It covers
so much
the great.
backstory.
It covers the great moment, the chaotic moment in time when the Urskeks first arrived on the planet. And something that I find so amazing about Brea, Brea is listening very carefully to the puppet show presentation that she's being given by Skek Gra and Ergo. And she suddenly speaks to Rianne. And of course, Deet is just completely involved in the aesthetics. And she's like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And she's clapping. But super perceptive Brea stops. And the dialogue is in that episode. And she says, they are not from here. They're from another world. And all of a sudden, this metaphysical connection snaps in her brain. And she's starting to wildly think ahead. We don't get this dialogue from her later on. I'm sure that would be season 2 dialogue, where she would start to openly speculate with the other characters about what method of travel they used to get here and where they are from. But the creation myths is so brilliant because we're at that moment where the Urskeks arrive, and the only person they're interacting with is Agra and her son Ronep, and it's amazing. It is the most amazing storytelling, and it runs the engine of the entire mythology of the 1982 film. Especially good. It's especially good, and thank you for letting me talk too much. I'm sorry, John, but
No, it's great.
It is the best stuff. I mean, I love really good graphic novels and good comic books, and the very best that you can ever get is Neil Gaiman's The Sandman. This is the most intelligent and thoughtful world building and playing with the mythologies and folklore and demigods of the entire world. You want to get good comic books? Get the creation myths, and you'll start to realize that Archaea is bringing something that's equally classy, really good world building and fascinating stuff. Thank you for letting me pontificate. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Amy is making a joke in the chat that if you had seen when she was guesting on the stream, you would know what talking too much is.
You guys are very kind. You're very kind. Thanks.
For myself, I love it because I actually am quite a shy individual, so it takes a lot to get me talking. So it helps a lot when you guys want to just unleash. Mm-hmm. So, I love this. Voice of Deeptim Dan is actually, this is something that I put on Twitter a few days ago, which was Netflix dares to cancel Agra. Agra can barely cancel Agra.
Hello, Voice of Geekdom. It's good to have all of you live chatters with us. It's great to see everybody here in the chat. Let's talk about the Agra and the Gandalf connection, because I love it so much. I love it.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I know that when I watched the original film, Agra was quite a bizarre character to me, and I was never entirely sure how to take her. Watching Age of Resistance, it is very evident that she's fulfilling a sort of Gandalf role without, being Gandalf. She's very much her own unique, strange character, and I love her like so much. It's like when she gathers them all to the dream space and she's moving around and doing this, weird dance, to the point where she even starts like, shaking her booty at one point. And it's like she's such a wonderful, just unique character. But yeah, let's dive into her and sort of connections to Gandalf, because I do recognize that a lot.
I can say that this is why I was attracted to the story originally. You can look at the Gandalf parallels with Obi-Wan Kenobi that were so evident, in fact, that in interviews that were broadcast at the time, Sir Alec Guinness actually spoke quite openly, and that video clip just made the rounds on Twitter last week of him casually sitting there. Oh yes, there's so much, Lord of the Rings, references here to this story, and he recognized that he was playing a Gandalf character who is actually reaching back to the classical Greek motif of a mentor. As we know, the mentor was the actual name of a character, who was the old man who gave guidance and teachings and wisdom before the hero had to go off on his journey, offering that side support of mentorship. Well, that's where we get the word from, mentorship. It's directly from the Greek storytelling. And so Gandalf is there because Tolkien saw that there was a character like that in the Icelandic Eddas, the powerful ancient poetry, the oral traditions of ancient battles and ancient stories of Iceland, and the great northern poems from Finland, the Kalevala, that really turned on the imagination in Tolkien's mind. So those characters go from that old spoken word tradition. I mean, before mankind even wrote down his history, he was at the dark fireplace. I mean, in the mead hall, literally, they're in the mead hall, just coming back from killing a whale off the coast. And they've lit the bonfires to keep the darkness at bay. And these people tell great poems and stories of Beowulf. And all these wizard-type characters were there, and Tolkien's great interests in that background. And so he created his Istari, the 5 wizards who would wander Middle-earth in the Third Age. Notice I said Third Age. The wizards are not there in Middle-earth in the Second Age. So we should not reasonably expect any Gandalf or any wizard characters in the new Amazon Studios TV series that they're currently producing. So the wizards are there, and then the wizards start to become such a trope. They become a trope of fantasy storytelling. And then where are we now? They're everywhere of course, with the wizarding world of Harry Potter. But before we get to where we are now, there's Agra, and there's Agra. There's Obi-Wan Kenobi. There are wizard characters showing up in so many of these types of storytelling. But I did not know that the makers of Age of Resistance would make it so literal. They make it so literal that Agra gets to sacrifice herself, not to the Balrog, but to the crystal. And then she comes back.
I want to cut in for a second because there's a question, because we just mentioned Voice of Deeptim. Have you actually seen his channel? Because he does a lot of Tolkien material.
I'm afraid I'm not too familiar. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'll have to go look.
He's been going through the Silmarillion. If somebody wants to pop in the link in the chat, so that if you want to go back to that later, because I recommend it. He's got some pretty darn good stuff on there.
Heck yeah, I'd love to check that out.
Yeah,
I'd love to check that out.
I will say, but about Agra's resurrection, what's really great is, until you mentioned that yesterday, I hadn't even noticed that when she comes back, she is, as you said, Agra the Red.
Yes, she is. And she comes back in Agra the Red.
And she's in the outfit that we actually see in the 1982 Dark Crystal, which completely went over my head when I watched it before. So I'm so glad you mentioned that.
Well, like they say in the newspaper business, the devil's in the details. Yeah. But there's also the journey of Jen and the journey of Frodo. There are distinct parallels there. I mean, not only is Agra like a vessel of sacrifice and rebirth, where she becomes renewed again, just like Gandalf does. But there's also the essence of Frodo and his crystal shard. Just as, we have Jen who has to deal with his own one ring that has to be taken on a really specific great journey into the heart of evil, where it is most difficult to go. And he has to go and do a very, very specific thing to fulfill and heal the world. And while he takes steps on his quest, Jen and Frodo are slowly aided and helped along by various different voices, characters, and different threads of destiny that come together. Although, I think in Jim Henson's original plan, it was supposed to be simplified because he wanted to get a different message across. Here's where the rubber meets the road. If you guys want to get granular, come with me. Professor J.R.R. Tolkien was a devout Catholic, and his Catholicism and his deep spirituality had a profound influence on his work. And there are certain ideals that even C.S. Lewis also became a great Christian apologist and a writer who also had his work influenced beyond measure by the power of his own spirituality. And the same thing can be said for Jim Henson in his efforts to make The Dark Crystal. And you'll learn more about this if David Odell wrote the screenplay for the original 1982 film. And he worked with Jim on a lot of ideas about spirituality and crystals and metaphysics. And then we go into the realm of metaphysics that include astral projection, the ability of the self, the spirit self, to be separated from the physical self, which is quite a metaphysical jump for a lot of people. It depends upon your belief system in the world. There's a lot of cultural background to these ideas in different storytelling and different legends and mythologies around the world. But for Mr. Henson, he got involved with the spirituality and the teachings of a woman who identified herself as Ramtha. And Ramtha was a woman who claimed to be channeling the 26,000-year-old spirit of Atlantis, or Atlanteans, who were once alive in an ancient place. And she wrote a book, or quite a few, and I saw her appear on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Oprah interviewed Ramtha. I saw her on TV in the late 80s, and but in the early 80s, in the late 70s even, Jim said to his screenwriter, "Here, take this book by Ramtha and digest this, and then we'll start talking about some of these ideas," because he was building a world where luminescent crystals could be used as spiritual engines of planetary energies and spiritual force, as well as crystals being used for astral projection or intergalactic physical transport. And it's wild. But it's all Jim's, spiritual ideas come to a point where I can put this into some storytelling. And he thought, I can put this into some storytelling with what? Oh, there's Brian Froud. Oh, look at that stuff. Maybe I can. Oh, and then there was this amazing mesh of creative minds. And David Odell actually talks about it in interviews that are printed in the back pages of the Creation Myths graphic novel published by Archaea. And it's really fascinating stuff to me. And I have a physical copy of, here it is. It's right here in front of me. The World of the Dark Crystal. This is the ultimate, this is the original 1983 edition. Oh my gosh, so exciting. When I was a kid, I was so excited to get that book.
I just got that for this past Christmas, obviously the newest edition, not the original. Mm-hmm. But I remember when I got it, first of all, I was surprised by how big it was. And
yes, coffee table book.
And it's just gorgeous. And there's so much, and it's written from Agra's perspective of her telling this history. And I made a comment in our chat group a couple days ago, which was that what's so great about that book is that there's a lot of coffee table books for properties that come out that say this goes, deep, beyond the film. And usually it's just a line. Usually it has a lot of stuff that is actually in the film or TV show. This book is different. This book
Mhm.
dives, and this was out, even put out before the original film was released by a number of months, and it dives into so much mythology, so much history
Oh, yes.
that is barely hinted at in the film.
Yep.
Um,
Copyright 1982. I didn't get mine until like a year after this was published. Oh no. See, I got this in 1984. It was a birthday gift in 1984, but it was published in 82. That's right.
yeah, so it's a really very unique book, and
Hmm. It is.
so I was really glad to actually get a copy. Although, as I said, I'll confess that I certainly don't have the original. Um,
It's a great keepsake. It is a collector's item, and I keep it in a refrigerated case over there with my extra copy of the Declaration of Independence. I keep it in a UV light protected refrigerated cryo box. No, I'm joking. I'm joking, obviously. The thing about the spirituality discussion is that Professor Tolkien had so much Catholicism drive certain narrative, even the narrative development of Gollum and Sam and Frodo. The three characters end up having this interpersonal relationship, which ends up saving the world by accident. Because as everybody knows the story in The Lord of the Rings, Frodo, spoilers, gets to the end at Mount Doom, and the ring overpowers his will. And then Gollum is there to intervene. And because Gollum is an interloper at that moment, Professor Tolkien wanted to have a conversation in the background of the reader's mind about Frodo's mercy. And Frodo was like, no, I won't kill him. I think there's still a chance to save him. And Sam says, no, he's a villain. He's going to kill us. And Frodo says, no, I still have to think that there's hope for him, that there's hope for him somehow. I have to believe that there's maybe a way for him to have salvation or to change. And then, Gollum is treacherous over and over and ever again, but Frodo actually says, in the book, if you touch me ever again, you shall be cast yourself into the fires of doom, which becomes a prophetic statement. And it was like an example. It was Tolkien's example of the Lord's Prayer. And to him, the Lord's Prayer was, an obvious statement of his profound faith that he did every day, probably several times a day as a Catholic. And, the text of the prayer goes, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Which is the operational thing that Frodo and Gollum and Sam have. Sam is not willing to forgive Gollum, but Frodo is, because Frodo's willing to forgive and give Gollum a chance. Gollum is actually there at the very end to be a place to deliver Frodo from the moment of his spiritual failure. Exactly what Tolkien wanted. Frodo had a moment of spiritual failure, but because he had an earlier moment of spiritual grace in the story, it was something that made the conditions available to save Frodo at the end. And that's a deeply spiritual idea that drives the narrative of the whole conclusion of The Lord of the Rings. It's the Lord's Prayer. Not everybody knows this because you don't see it that way. It's not obvious. It's not obvious at all. And there was a lot of disagreement between C.S. Lewis and Professor Tolkien, who were close friends. They were friends, they were compatriots, and they were members of the Inklings, as everyone knows. But C.S. Lewis would write things in the Narnia stories in a very obvious and specific way.
Yeah.
That character, that lion, Aslan, represents that spiritual essence of Jesus, period. There's no debate about the analogy. And Professor Tolkien was like, come on, Jack. That's what they called him, Jack Lewis. Tolkien would say, please, you're going to give the reader the benefit of the doubt and let those symbols take a background space so that they can read into it intuitively and come to it. And so they argued about it, their whole lives. It was a fascinating friendship, the two of them. So Professor Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were those kinds of writers who are putting spiritual ideas into their narratives. And here comes Jim Henson doing it with these bizarre, sometimes ghoulish puppets. And it's a story that is an engine for some of his spiritual beliefs. And no one really knows and no one really sees it because it's back in the background. We're more interested in how did these Gelflings survive the genocide of the Garthan wars? How did Agra not know that she had that shard the whole time? Are they going to make it? Why is it when one Skeksis gets his hand stabbed, the mystic over there in the other scene is bleeding suddenly? Oh, snap. And, the people who are watching the film are so involved in the narrative, they suddenly start to come to it, and they realize that the movie, the original 1982 film, is a deep meditation. The movie is more than a work of art. It's a meditation on yin and yang, a meditation on spiritual duality, and a lot of other metaphysical ideas that were important to Jim Henson at the time. And I find that one of the most interesting connections between The Lord of the Rings and the world of Thra. It is endlessly, endlessly fascinating to me. That's where I see it.
Yeah, I have to say that
deep dive.
Yeah, I'm very much the type of person looking at a story, and I'm immersed in the story that I see in front of me. So I'm definitely one of those people who's not making all of those connections. So, but that's incredible to think about. I definitely
isn't it nice not to be hit over the head with it, so that you can at least get there yourself and deduce it yourself, isn't it?
That is the thing about C.S. Lewis, and I have, and full disclosure, I'm sure I read them all when I was younger, but in my recollection, I'm only really familiar with the first couple of books, and I do know that those those elements just keep getting stronger, the more that those stories go on. And and I know a lot of people don't like that. I've talked to people who don't like the heavy Christian elements, just because, as you say, it does kind of hit you over the head with them.
Yeah, well, the turnkey opposite might be his Dark Materials, the Golden Compass. The author is completely atheist, very, very atheist. And so a lot of his ideology about atheism is written deeply into the narrative and the fabric of the amber spyglass and the golden compass and all that stuff. So it's interesting, to me, that writers, good writers, really good authors who are interested in fantasy world building, like Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin, his ideas are really layered. It includes political and spiritual and anthropological observations of things that affect his world on different levels. And we go to Dune because there's a lot of hype coming up for the upcoming feature film. And of course, Frank Herbert is another author who had so many specific ideas about political systems and like long-term strands of history that influence mankind. That's always kind of cool and interesting to me when an author takes their personal interests and carefully weaves them into their fictional world building. I wish I had the aptitude for that. I wish I had the skills. I don't. It's just really, really cool. The good thing about Age of Resistance, which to its credit, is that it was not shy about exploring some of these ideas. Take note of the conversation between the general and the emperor when they're down there in the caves under the castle of the crystal. And very occupied with the darkening. The emperor Skekso is looking into the fissure, and the purple light of the darkening is there. And he's staring at it, he's absorbed in it, like staring into a fireplace. And he says to the general, "Do you sleep? Do you dream?" And he says, and they have that weird conversation, "No, Emperor, I don't." And then he asks him, "Do you remember? Do you remember anything about the time before?" Wow. The Emperor is thinking about the time before, when they were Urskeks, when they were a unified being. Whoa. Okay, that is when I realized the writers and creators of this series were not going to shy away from the idea that they're spiritual and physical beings that are conscious of their duality and the fact that they belong together.
Yeah.
And the Skeksis spend centuries and centuries and centuries fighting the natural instinct, with the exception of Go and Skek Gra, bless their hearts. But the other Skeksis, under the power and influence of their own self-made hierarchy and the Emperor himself, I found it kind of eye-opening that the Emperor is thinking, those nightmares that you're having, he was asking about dreams and do you have nightmares? And he says, but still the questions come. But still the questions come. And he admits his weakness, his metaphysical weakness, about how much he's bothered by this. And he doesn't get much, of a simpatico relationship with the general in that conversation, but it steers them towards power and a conversation of using power to dominate and to push back against the natural way that they're supposed to be. I thought it was really surprising that the Skeksis would have dreams or nightmares or any memories of what their lives were like before the split between the Uru and the Skeksis. Didn't you find that fascinating? Because it's hinting at other places the storytellers are willing to go in season 2 or season 3. They want to go there.
The fact that it was the Emperor also who's speaking this, who we think of as being, sort of, he is the major villain of the piece, and the one that we assume would be the most removed from any sort of feeling of recalling, what it was like when he was whole with his other half. And it is surprising, and I really liked those moments. There's another moment when Agra goes to sacrifice herself, and there's that moment between her and the scientist when she says it didn't have to be this way. We were friends once. And you just see this moment where the scientist kind of looks back at the Emperor and then looks back and he's like, and repeats the opening line of the film, which is,
"Oh my, yes,
another world, another time." As
brilliant.
If there's an element of regret there, but it's being buried.
And he admits it.
Yeah,
he admits it. And don't you think that Skek Tech would be the character most motivated to seek the motivation, to seek the end result of reunification with his true self? Because he could probably use his mind and his brilliance to invent things that could help it happen, that could actually help it happen. It's also assumed that Skek Tech had a great hand in the designing and the building of her orrery.
Yeah.
I'm at the time when he was an Urskek,
And actually, I was really amazed because I have, full disclosure, even though I have gone through and looked at a lot of it, I haven't had the opportunity to in-depth read World of the Dark Crystal. However, I have gone through certain sections, and the other day I was going through it and I was shocked to discover that there is a passage in there that talks about Agra being close with Skek Tech, and I'm like, holy crap, this is stuff that was rooted in the mythology all the way
Yep.
since the beginning, and they incorporated that into Age of Resistance, and it was at that point that my appreciation for how well this entire mythology and story is built just
Mhm.
increased exponentially.
Yeah.
It's amazing how they continue to bring stuff forward and tie things back.
Hmm.
It's just
Indeed.
astonishing.
Indeed. There's a moment in the 1982 film, one of the most famous lines that always gets an unexpected laugh. Who sent you? My master, wisest of the mystics. She gasps and says, where is he? Is he here? As if she's suddenly nervous about that. And then he says, he's dead. Could be anywhere then. And that's the moment. That's the moment where Jim's spiritual ideas are coming around very specifically in that dialogue. Could be anywhere then. And Agra also says something similar to everybody in the room when she walks into the scientist's laboratory and she sees Skek Mal lying there prone and in a coma. She says, he was always the most beautiful of you shriveled lot. You know, that she's acknowledging her past with them. Because as we know, the Skeksis spent a very, very, very long time pretending to be friendly, pretending to be cooperative, keeping their secret BS plans to themselves, right? And so she was duped. As long as we're being honest here, all things being equal, the Gelfling were duped, the Podlings, all the living creatures of Thra, the Firelings. If we don't know if the Skeksis had any contact with the Firelings. Hello, here be dragons, good to see you. But there's this thing where Agra acknowledges we had a past relationship, and yeah, it's very intriguing to me. They had so much world building that was going to open up into season 2 and would have opened up into season 3.
But I take solace in the fact that the end, if this is the end of Age of Resistance, and against all my sort of better judgment, there is reason to hope for something going forward, and we're gonna actually talk about that more towards the end of the stream. But if this is the complete end of Age of Resistance, it's not the end of the Dark Crystal, because the Jim Henson Company is dedicated to to continuing on with stories and with the franchise. So I take heart that world building is not for naught. It will. I mean, let's say that nothing ever comes in the form of another season of television or a TV movie. This is mythology that can be carried forward in future graphic novels, YA books, or maybe just or maybe they'll move on to beyond YA books into a big novel or something, and so part of this is kind of part of the grieving process of you don't want to admit that you've lost something, so there's a bit of a denial, but the story can still continue to move forward even so I don't feel like laying all that groundwork is for nothing. It's I do believe that in some capacity we're going to get the further adventures of Rian, Deet, Hup, and all these wonderful characters, and we'll continue to learn more about the history of things like Agra's relationship with the Urskeks and all that stuff. So yeah, there's a part of me that's just like, yeah, I'm mad, but I don't want to feel like it was a waste them, so beautifully constructing, the
Yes.
series, what they laid out, because within this season of television, it was a magnificent achievement. And I do believe that what they laid the foundation for will still pay off in the future in whatever form that takes.
I agree. I would speculate. Maybe we'll do this a little bit later in the end of our segment, but we can speculate with some pretty good guesswork about what might happen next. But the whole idea of this film, this television series, just completely stopping, doesn't make practical sense when you're looking at the numbers, because they have all the sets built. Those sets are built. They're ready. They're ready. The writers of the show could write things that, include far fewer building of new sets and new locations, if they have a mind to do it. And even as you watch the documentary, the Crystal Calls, you realize
and that's a beautiful documentary. Everybody needs to watch that. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's unbelievably informative. The writer says, "Oh, well, we made a throwaway line of dialogue: exterior, balcony, sunset, blah blah blah," and they didn't realize that they wrote those 7 or 8 little words, and then there's another $65,000 and an entire team of artists that built half a warehouse to make a giant balcony. It's the most beautiful thing. So I'm saying physically, because I know, as a film producer, I know how much money it takes to produce a film, and how much money you're going to spend on hiring people and paying for music licensing, or paying for effects or sound, or the editors and post-production, insurance. All that stuff is in your little Excel spreadsheet, and everybody who sits around the producer's table are talking about this. If COVID-19 was a problem, and it is a significant problem, with them not being able to go back to work on a production in England, but with the sets already built, and they don't have to spend that much more money. They would make new characters. They would spend money on introducing new Skeksis. I would assume that a couple of Skeksis that are mentioned, as being out of the castle at the time, would suddenly appear.
Because they do mention we should call back, and then they name a couple. Among them is Skek Ung, who is the
Garthen Master
sister, who is the chief villain of the Dark Crystal film.
Yep, exactly.
So I would love to. That's the thing. When I was thinking about season 2, I'm like, oh, that's so cool. We're gonna.
And also Skek Na, the slave master. Yeah, he's not present. He has an eye patch. Skek Na, the slave master, is in the film, but he's not in the Age of Resistance. And there are other characters. I agree. I think that Netflix could invest a lot less money, like you just pointed out, because the groundwork was already laid. The extraordinary physical effort to build that world has mostly been done. There's stone in the wood. There's the interior of Agra's observatory, and there's the castle itself. Yes. And there's what it would take would be time. Let the writers write and spend the first part of production while COVID is still a problem. And instead of putting all the puppeteers together, because they cannot physically have all those people underneath that 4-foot riser, and literally everything is on a 4-foot riser, and you've got lots of camera people and lots of puppeteers and operators really crammed together.
And we did talk about this
spaces.
Yeah, we did talk about this, because even if Netflix had said, okay, we want another season, it would not be happening now.
Yes, in fact, I was hypothesizing the amount of time they'd have to wait to do it. How long do you think they'd have to wait to let writers write new episodes, let some of the craftspeople make some new puppets, but not bring the whole team together until COVID was over, until there's an effective vaccine? I don't know. How long do you think they'd be They'd be able to wait, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
before they start filming.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing. It's such a question mark of when are we going to be past COVID? When is it going to be safe enough for people to return to this kind of work? Because
well, look at New Zealand.
Yeah, but that's true.
Amazon Studios has boots on the ground, armies of boots on the ground. There are people filming all over Auckland. They've got the water tanks going, like they're doing underwater scenes. They've got special stunt people coming in. They've got Weta Workshop, who does all the swords and the armor and the costume. They're all there. And Here Be Dragons has made an excellent point. Let the pre-production happen that doesn't require you to violate health restrictions and put people in a poorly ventilated studio. Just do all that later. And I'm thinking you're right in saying we don't know. We don't know how long we'll have to wait, but at least they could get started on the pre-stuff, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Here I am, Mr. Hopeful, but if Netflix says no, and they're just going to keep saying no, what if the Henson Company says, okay, we come around with our writing team and our producers, and we do something else? Why don't we do a single wrap-up feature film? And maybe Netflix would say yes to that. And it could be The Dark Crystal, The Garthim Wars. The Garthim Wars.
And Dan here's making a good point, is the fact that since the show features puppets, there's not a problem of worrying about the actors aging, and so time is actually on our side in this regard.
True.
So, but that's what we were talking about earlier. That's why it's really important to keep supporting the Dark Crystal.
I agree.
Any way that you can. There's the bestiary book that's coming out this month. I've got mine pre-ordered. It's got some beautiful art.
I can't wait.
And I got actually a Dark Crystal Age of Resistance calendar in the mail today for next year.
Awesome.
So it's like, and honestly, that one was part of like my inner defiance. It's like, you gonna cancel Age of Resistance? No, I'm gonna have it up on my freaking wall for the next year. It's not canceled. It lives on.
It lives on. It does. I love that spirit. Well, they call it a ship. The local parlance of calling it a fandom, the word is now ship. Okay, that's the new word. That's the new lingo for referring to a fandom. And this is a strong ship, the one that we're on, Thra. And perhaps it's a subtle reference to fellowship, because we are a fellowship of believers in the world of Thra and the journey of Jen, and the success of this story is important to us. There's no other way to say it. We are attached to this story. We are very much attached. And it's probably worth analyzing, and maybe we could make a whole different documentary about how people are attached to a certain bit of fiction and how it invigorates the mind and uplifts the spirit. But there's something about Thra that we're not willing to let go. We're not willing to let go as a fandom, as this ship is sailing strong. And so you're right. We get our copies of the bestiary. We can get the new pressings of the soundtrack vinyl, collector's vinyl that's coming out. You saw our friend on the Dark Crystal Conjunction was just showing that off. I was like, oh boy, can't wait. And over here in Lord of the Rings land, Ringers are very excited about the upcoming 40th anniversary edition of Unfinished Tales by J.R.R. Tolkien. And there's this beautiful,
I just need to cut in.
This beautiful book is coming.
Because you mentioned ship, there's a running joke. We have lots of those about in our chat group. Kelly is she works on ships and stuff. So every time the word ship is mentioned, it's like she's summoned to the chat. Yeah, she's triggered.
Yeah. Oh, you're so awesome. You're so. Oh, don't be triggered. I love it. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I walked into that one. I totally walked into that one. But yeah, I just there's the bestiary for fans of the Dark Crystal, and then there's Unfinished Tales, which has illustrations by Ted Naismith and Alan Lee and John Howe. And all of us Rings fans know that John Howe and Alan Lee won the Oscar for working with Weta doing the designs for all 6 of the Middle-earth movies from Peter Jackson and New Line Cinema. So it's a very exciting time to get our books and to go purchasing our books for ourselves. And I'm telling you what, they make the best Christmas gifts. Those books are wonderful gifts for everybody you know. So us Dark Crystal fans should be planning ahead, like get all these books for friends.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Unfinished Tales book with the artwork. It's like, yeah, I've got a couple copies of that, and nothing's going to stop me from getting that one too.
I know. I'm like, I can't wait. I'm like, my favorite edition of the Silmarillion is not the one that I have, the original 1970s edition. It was published in 1977. I have first edition 1977 Silmarillion, but I don't read it. I read the nice anniversary copy with all the Ted Naismith portraits and all the paintings inside it. That's the one I read. So, yeah, you and I are 2 peas in a pod on that.
Yeah, I desperately need that copy, which is hilarious because we had a thing in our chat group a couple months ago where we were getting gifts for one of our friends. Actually, it's our Stephen and my co-host for Here Be Dragons, and we got her a bunch of Tolkien books, and that was one of them, the illustrated Silmarillion with all that artwork. And I'm like, damn it, we're getting this for someone else, and I still need it for myself.
You know what? At some point when I had a lot less cash, and the hardcover of Baron and Luthien came out, okay, that was like, what, 2 or 3 years ago? Maybe it was 3 years ago, I forget. And instead of buying one for myself, I could only afford to buy one, and I sent it to my brother and sent it to him as a gift because I got started reading Tolkien when I was a little boy because of his interest in The Hobbit. And hello, Círdan. Yeah, I know. And it's not pronounced Círdan. It's pronounced hard Círdan. That's how you say that. A lock snake. I'm hypnotized by the lock snake. It's being hypnotized on my TV by Skeksil right now. God, I love that. I love that. Skeksis eating lock snakes. I love it. I love it.
And this is the great thing. You guys don't know this, but the whole time we've been talking, Cliff has had the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance playing on his television, which I love.
It's on there. It's on there. He's, Mark Hamill, bless his heart. Mark Hamill. Okay, I'm gonna start being a fanboy for a minute, but you can't tell me that Simon Pegg did not do an amazing job. You cannot tell me that Mark Hamill did not just nail it. And I'm so impressed. I'm so impressed by how they got. Who would have thought that little Aquafina would come up with this ghastly, outsized voice for Skek Lee, the collector? Who would ever think? I was so impressed.
She's
crazy. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. Okay, were you guys totally grossed out? I thought that when Skek Ayuk, the Gormand, took a pee on the wall, I thought, oh, that's just too much. That's just too much. That's just too much. But then again, in the original film in 1982, you see the baby Nebri, beautiful baby Nebri, cut to the next shot, there's a roast Nebri. And it's just, You're like, really? Does it? Did you have to? And yeah, the original film did not shy away from being, unsavory. It was kind of like they were relishing in that. I think
Well,
it was kind of a
that's the
perverse
thing.
joy to go
You
away
have,
from the Muppets aesthetic and do something weird and gross.
you have this dichotomy of there's such beauty in the dark crystal, just with the environments and the Gelfling and everything, and then on the other side of it, you've got everything about the Skeksis, which is just gross and disturbing, and it's fantastic though.
It is. It's as gross as they can possibly get away with. It's just the most common element, I think, was maybe Jim Henson was taking some kind of weird, perverse joy in taking a wild departure from the cadence and the colors of Muppet style storytelling and able to deep dive into something really, really different. And I'm glad to see that the producers of Age of Resistance were not shy about it, but boy, that was gross. Yeah, the voice work is so wonderful, and they can come back later. The actors can do their recordings and not be in any environment which is breaking health restrictions. They can actually be by themselves with you know what I mean. So I'm coming back to that conversation. If Netflix had kept the faith, if only Netflix had kept the faith, they could be in a long stretch of pre-production, and they could have everything ready and waiting to go, to just go. But then nobody wants to do that. You know what? Rob Pattinson catching COVID on the set of The Batman. You noticed that happened about how many weeks before Netflix made the announcement?
Yeah.
I bet you there's something to that. I bet you that they're looking at the world and saying, oh, there's another news headline of somebody getting COVID, and then they have to stop production and shut everything down. And in terms of getting insurance, actual production insurance, it would be impossible, almost impossible. So I don't know. It's a weird combination of things that we don't know and things that we can reasonably guess that caused Netflix to lose faith and turn into Saruman the traitor.
I want to take a moment just now, because Stephen has asked this question before, which is it possible that the show could go to another streaming service? Now, based on what I have been hearing, it's that because of the way contracts are handled with Netflix shows, that actually might not be possible, or at least very easy. Because that show belongs to Netflix, and as a Netflix property, they're probably going to want to hold on to that even as they don't renew it. Which is kind of why I've been to be honest, my first instinct when this happened, the cancellation, which did not go unnoticed by people who follow me on Twitter, was that I was really enraged at Netflix, and my initial impulse was, I'm canceling your service. Unfortunately, that doesn't really help matters related to Age of Resistance, because that's they own it, and nothing's going to happen with this show without them. So I instead shifted to making sure that I didn't cancel my service, that I continued on and looking for ways to kind of show Netflix that it would be smart in the future for them to take another look and maybe change their mind. And there's a couple things going on right now with regard to that, which which I've been made aware of mostly through a Facebook group called The Crystal Shard, which I would recommend Dark Crystal fans go ahead and sign up. all the links I'm about to mention, I actually have in the description, but I will also pop them up right here. Here's the Crystal Shard Facebook group. Definitely
good.
go there, and because there are a couple different efforts to kind of sway Netflix, even if it's doesn't happen right away, but just things to try and keep hope alive. And one of those things is a petition for season 2, which is nearing about 10,000 signatures. It's getting close.
Wow.
And so this is the address for that. Again, I have it in the description for anybody who wants a link to click on. I highly recommend going ahead and signing that, and that, as well as another petition, which is for a season 1 Blu-ray. Now I know
that's a new one. I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, and it doesn't have it doesn't have nearly as many signatures, and I'm asking people please to go sign that, because even if you're not really big into physical media, this is crucial. We need the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance on Blu-ray and DVD,
so we can have it forever.
Maybe even 4K. Although that's probably a bit more doubtful, but I would love to if we push for that, because it's super important, not just so that we have it, and so that if Netflix ever decides to take it off their service, we actually have it, but it's important that the fandom spreads beyond people who are on Netflix. More people need to be able to see the show so that we can grow our numbers. And that happens by Age of Resistance sitting on store shelves, by people lending it to their friends, things of that nature. A Blu-ray is absolutely essential for making that happen. And if you want more Age of Resistance, this needs to happen. So definitely go and sign that petition as well.
Yes, thank you, buddy, for letting me know. I didn't even know that.
And also there's other websites like for podcasts. One of them I have right here, which is darkcrystalpodcast.com, which is a Trial by Stone, which is again a podcast. I listen to them quite a bit. They've got lots of great interviews, and they're going to have information about efforts like that to try and sway Netflix, and just for general news. There's also another podcast called Dark Crystal Conjunction, which I actually don't have the link on me right now, but if you go ahead and search on Twitter, you'll find their Twitter page. I highly recommend following them as well.
Yes.
So all these different resources, I would really compel Dark Crystal fans to go ahead and look for this stuff. And those petitions, especially, sign them. Get other people to sign them. Tell all your friends and family, if they love you, please sign this, because we need all that. And again, it's going out, and if you love the Dark Crystal, look at stuff that's just beyond what's on television. Look at the books that are coming out. Look at what's already out, and go ahead and buy some of that stuff, because it's all about continuing to show Netflix that the brand is strong and that people are interested in the Dark Crystal.
Yes, absolutely. That means if we show them that we're interested in the brand, like I said, earlier in the show, speak with your dollars and put your money where your mouth is. What if they will never, ever, ever let Disney Plus have it, so there can be other seasons? What if they don't let Amazon Prime ever have it? What if, but there's a more interesting chance that they'll look at the numbers and maybe they'll say, okay, we'll give you a finale event. And it could be a single one-piece film. I don't know. I have more faith that they might do
a single piece for closure than they would give us seasons 2, 3, or 4.
Yeah, which would be an interesting repeating of history, because of course there was a very similar thing with Farscape, where
Exactly.
where there wasn't a final season, but there was a 2-part miniseries, which wrapped up the story beautifully, in my opinion. And of course, I'm going to take this moment to show that I am a big Farscape fan, because I came to that show
Yes.
I came to the show years after all the drama, but I remember when I saw that season 4 finale, and I was like, this is how they left it.
I
It's
know.
that could not be like could not have been a more fitting ending for a show that was very cruelly cut short, because if that had been the end of the series, it would have really captured the emotions of all the fans who were left without a conclusion, because that ending is just like pain and suffering.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
but the fans rallied, and we did, and they did get a 2-part miniseries, and it's a beautiful ending, and hopefully, I choose to hope that we may still see something similar happen with Age of Resistance, because you know what? I want to see what happens to poor Deet. I want to see, maybe her, reunion with Hupp, because it's like for 2 characters who were so close throughout Age of Resistance, for the season to end with them apart, it's just like, no. I need those characters to come back together. I want to see what happens, what happened with the Heretic and the Wanderer, who disappeared at the end.
What happened to them? What happened? Where did they go?
Yeah, I don't know. And and it's just like and the thing is, we don't know. Part of me is like, did they die? Did they return to Thra for some reason, because maybe they had served their purpose, or did they just step off screen and we were gonna see them again in season 2? We don't really know, and this is, and again, I have no doubt that this story will continue in some form. Lisa Henson will see to that. The question is whether we see that on screen, or if we continue it in a graphic novel or a book. But I would like to see it on screen. I have fallen in love with these characters as portrayed by the puppeteers and by the voice actors. So I want to see them return in that way. And that is all about showing, as we've been talking about, showing support for the brand, and signing these petitions, and just doing whatever we can in the hope that, that this isn't the end.
I hear Disney Plus mentioned in every conversation about this, because they already have the licensing for all of the Muppets and other properties with Henson. So the deal with Disney and Henson made headlines. That made entertainment headlines years ago, when Disney decided to fully invest and buy the Jim Henson Company, but that did not include the Dark Crystal, and it certainly did not include Sesame Street, which remained on public broadcasting for years and years and years, until very recently HBO took that license. And that's unfortunate. I think Sesame Street should be available to all of the little babies and all the little preschoolers, not just people who subscribe to HBO. That's just one man's opinion. I'm sitting over here waving my flag. Sorry. But so it seems that the Henson properties are equally split to different interests. Netflix has one, HBO has another main one, part of the cultural imprint of America, Sesame Street. Quite significant. And then, of course, Disney Plus has all of the other Muppets and their current properties. It seems weird, but when you're talking in legalese, it's called licensing. This is called licensing a property from somebody. Tolkien Enterprises was a company that paid a reasonable amount of money to Professor J.R.R. Tolkien, and they got the rights to The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. That's it. They did not get any rights to any other books by Tolkien, and that certainly takes out of the realm of possibility the Silmarillion or Unfinished Tales. But that's why in 1977, Rankin and Bass, through the deal of licensing The Hobbit, got to make the animated feature. It was a telefilm broadcast on network TV in 1977.
Yeah.
The Hobbit.
Everybody in my audience knows about the animated film because I did a stream
Oh
on
yeah,
it where
yeah,
I had 3 other people on my channel, and I'll admit I was pretty much the lone defender of that film.
I love that film. I love that film so much. I love it so much. But the licensing got more complicated with The Lord of the Rings. Ralph Bakshi had the chance to direct a film because United Artists had the license for The Lord of the Rings. And they did not complete. They only did the first half. Mm-hmm. Notoriously, Bakshi did this wildly ambitious, psychedelic, very intriguing piece of art. It's not entirely successful as an adaptation, but it is rather successful and takes great strides in visualizing Middle-earth for the first time. It was the first time any feature film had touched Middle-earth. And Peter Jackson borrowed liberally from visual motifs and exact shot-for-shot moments that Ralph Bakshi had in his movie. In particular, the 4 hobbits hiding under the roots of the tree while the evil ringwraith comes slowly skulking around the tree and gets off of his horse and starts to sniff and look around for the ring, which is nearby under the tree roots. Well, shot for shot, Peter Jackson took that shot from Ralph Bakshi from his United Artists release, and that came out in 1978 or 79, if I'm not mistaken. And the licensing went over to Rankin and Bass to do a Return of the King animated film because Ralph Bakshi did not finish it. United Artists said, we give up the license. We don't want this license anymore. So Rankin and Bass got it again, and they made a telemovie of Return of the King, which is a real mess, but it's interesting. It's colorful, and it's a mess.
I do like to... a mess is a good way to put it, but I prefer to say a glorious mess because...
I would say yes, glorious. Glorious mess,
there's... I have... Because years back, actually, when I was... I think it was when the Lord of the Rings movies were coming out, and I was on a smaller message board of Lord of the Rings fans, and somebody was saying, oh my God, I can't stand... the animated Return of the King, and so I started typing out I posted an audio clip of where there's a whip, there's a way.
There's a way.
And they're like, no, stop. But I love it. I really do. It's a mess, but you know what? It's
That's
a goofy,
fantastic.
fun mess.
That is fantastic. We did a spoof of that in my documentary Ringers, and we got a couple of indie bands here in LA to do some cover versions. We got a cover version of Where There's a Whip, and we had another band to do a cover version of The Greatest Adventure, which was hilarious. But there's a beautiful song in the Return of the King animated film called Leave Tomorrow Till It Comes. And we licensed that song, and we got another artist to do a beautiful ballad with that, playing nothing but a mellotron. A mellotron is a particular type of 1980s synthesizer that has a unique sound, and it's just an extraordinary thing. But there's a lot to love about that beautiful mess. Yes, there is. But the reason why I'm talking about licensing is if the Jim Henson Company has Dark Crystal licensed over to Netflix only, and we don't know the terms of that. We don't know how many years it will be until that license is released. And then it might go out into the open to other people, like other streaming sites, to pick it up. When I sold my movie to Sony Pictures, they only got a 10-year license, and they only distributed the movie on cable around the world and on DVD for 10 years. And then the license was over, and the rights to the movie went back to me and the producers. So now we're relicensing it because we've re-edited the film, and we're going to represent it with a whole new edit and a high-resolution upgrade, and we're going to license it to somebody else.
I'm so excited to hear that, because
soon, it's coming soon.
Because it somehow passed me by when it was out before, and I've often looked for it, like on to purchase on streaming, because the DVD has sort of been out of print, but I had considered going and ordering it, but now that you've talked about it being upgraded,
it was in need of an upgrade.
So I'm thinking, okay, just be a little patient, and I'll be able to get it. Yeah,
my friend. The movie was originally released in 2005, and it was in standard definition because there wasn't high def running around in the marketplace at that time. So we had to up-res the movie entirely, going from standard to high def. And we're working with a lot of different streamers to negotiate a new license. So I'm trying to bring this up because it's relevant to where is the Age of Resistance going to go. The question is licensing. When will Netflix end their current rights to broadcast it and hold on to it? Oh, the title of the film is Ringers, Lord of the Fans. It's narrated by Dominic Monaghan. You can look it up on the Internet Movie Database on IMDb, Ringers. Instead of Trekkers or Trekkies, we called ourselves Ringers, and that's a name that's been around for a while. But the licensing question is, it's just as clear as, where is Sesame Street going to go? And that question was answered right away when HBO opened up their wallet and said, we're going to get the license with the Children's Television Workshop. Now we're going to broadcast it. And that answers your question about Age of Resistance. If Netflix can be persuaded in some way, if Netflix can be persuaded to reduce the length of time that's on their current contract to keep the license, and it could be part of a negotiation that could be part of the ticket price, the price of admission for Disney Plus to get involved, or Amazon Prime, would be they might have to negotiate and purchase the remaining years of the license that Netflix has. And I would not underestimate the power of getting a Blu-ray, or even better, maybe a 4K release. We're hearing whispers in the wind of something coming from the world of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, in terms of 4K. We're hearing a lot of whispers that Peter Jackson's been working on that for a long, long time, doing an upgrade on his 20-year-old masterpiece trilogy. And, one was shot on digital, The Hobbit trilogy, all shot on epic red cameras, all digital, 5K. The Hobbit is different from The Lord of the Rings, because The Lord of the Rings was not filmed on 5K, digital anything. If they were going to do that, and the rumors are kind of sketchy right now, but they'd have to go back to the original film prints and strike a new source and scan it at a much different high resolution, and it might look a bit different from the way we remember our original Lord of the Rings looking, on 4K.
Yeah, because actually, even when they had to go back to the master for Fellowship of the Ring for the extended Blu-ray release, and they actually, because they went back to it, they had to do a new digital intermediate for it, which is why a lot of the colors are a bit different from how the original DVD looked.
That's still a point of contention with ringers. Is that that Fellowship variance? Yeah.
And I'm actually wondering how the look of that film will fare on 4K if they'll take any of those criticisms into play as far as the colors go, because I assume because they'll be dealing with HDR and all that stuff, all of the films will be receiving a new color grade. So it'll be interesting to see if Fellowship fares better in the fans' minds, or if Two Towers and Return of the King are equally as much altered. So
we'll see. We'll see. And the Age of Resistance deserves a 4K release.
Yes,
it deserves a Blu-ray release. Maybe it'll be a combination set if they do it that way. But the economic forces have been really bad in the home video marketplace, and home video is very quickly going the way of the dinosaur. So,
which is why it's so, and this is why it's so weird for someone who remembers, when DVDs were everything. The fact that we're having to sign petitions to try and get, an Age of Resistance Blu-ray when that's in serious doubt. It's just
another dead format.
Laserdisc.
Can you believe that? Ooh, shiny. This is it. Shiny. The Laserdisc. The ultimate dead video format. But boy, does it look good. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you've got that. That is so cool.
I have
that is so
all
cool.
3 of the original trilogy. I'm very proud to own these.
Wow.
Not that I have a way to play it.
This is it. This is the Laserdisc. I haven't pulled this out of its sleeve in many years. This is crazy. But it's ugly. The artwork on this is so ugly. I mean, the thing itself is beautiful to watch on your player, but look at this physical media. Look at how ugly this artwork is. Jeez. I hate this.
Yeah.
It's no Amsel. It's nowhere near as mysterious and elegant as that beautiful Amsel poster. Let's compare. Do you have that Amsel image? Look at how ugly this is. See how ugly this is compared to the original poster?
Yeah,
I don't know if you still have it.
Yeah, let me bring that back up.
See how different that is? I know, there's just no comparison. No, so much.
They're all making jokes at my expense because I'm notorious for going on about physical media. And
I agree. I agree. And it's difficult because the spinning platter marketplace of any format, whether it's Blu-ray or 4K, is in danger of falling into what happened to the Laserdisc technology. And that's because the other streamers and the other companies are working so hard and giving you online content. So if it's going to be a Blu-ray release of Age of Resistance, we're going to have to put the pedal to the metal and buy every copy that they have to prove a point. They're going to have to be flying off the shelves to make it really prove that point home. And I'll be buying them for gifts for everybody. Absolutely.
Yeah, everybody in our Slack chat group will be getting a copy if they release it. I'll be driving them crazy with that, but you know what? If they don't want it, they can give it to somebody else.
Of course we want it. I love it. Do you remember that episode of Cowboy Bebop where they had to go and find an old VHS player? You ever see that show? Never?
I haven't, no.
Well, there's a joke about physical media in the series where they're way in the future, and there's a hidden message on a VHS tape, and so the characters have to go from one
planet to another until they can find someone who's an old electronics junk dealer on some outpost to find a functioning VHS player to be able to find what that bloody video is. And so it's like, yeah, that's what it's going to be like. If somebody wants to watch Age of Resistance in the time of Star Trek, The Next Generation, maybe they'll do an episode where Picard and the crew are desperately looking for a Blu-ray player, so they'll be able to watch Game of Thrones with puppets. Okay? Now, let me ask you something, my friend. Do you think that's a fair nickname that a lot of people were calling it? Game of Thrones with puppets.
But I get it because
well, it was a compliment. It was a compliment.
With Game of Thrones, it's the same thing with that show when they were trying to promote the show and somebody coined, it's like Lord of the Rings meets The Sopranos, and it's like that really was not really an accurate description, but they were trying to but they were trying to get across that it was basically HBO fantasy.
HBO fantasy, dark fantasy.
Yeah. And
dark, bloody, and violent.
And so I get it because Game of Thrones has been the big thing, and so by saying, Game of Thrones with puppets, it's an easy way to try and sell the show, but it's I never really liked those types of things because the Dark Crystal is such a unique thing onto itself that
I'll give you that. I'll give you that. Yeah.
So I feel like that's just not entirely an accurate descriptor, but I do get it because especially once you get into all the stuff midway through the season with Celadon, and and her turn, her dark turn, it does feel very sort of Game of Thrones-ish. But
I think we needed a season 2 just for Celadon to further redeem herself.
Yeah.
I think she has a lot of work to do. My boyfriend always sees her on the screen and he says, F word, Celadon. She's a mess. Like it's like some people look at her and they're like, she's out of control. And she has a lot to do besides what happened at, the Battle of Stone in the Wood to redeem herself in certain opinions. And maybe that is so obvious that the writers in the writers' room were giving this breathing room for season 2 to come in and fill some of that space that was going to be filled. Not just with what happens to Deet, but what happens to all the other characters. The Drenchen brother and sister, and and all these other great characters. Were they going to bring in firelings, maybe as a side character? Who knows? They had so much to do, and there were other Skeksis to come and other Uru. Really specifically, I think the most magical withholding trick, and that the number one rule in show business, always leave them wanting more. The producers of the show kept the mystics and the Uru way off stage, deliberately off stage. And if I'm not mistaken, that might be the most expensive and the biggest physical set that they'd have to build, the Valley of the Stones.
Well, and also those characters are very difficult to perform.
Oh, yeah, they're most difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. So difficult.
So it does make sense that aside from dramatically, it's it kind of leaving the audience wanting, more of those characters, but also in terms of tackling this immensely difficult season, what was supposed to be a first season, it does help to take a little bit of the pressure off to not be doing a whole bunch of your most complicated, puppets that you have to perform. So,
and we only got two. We got two mystics, and we got all these other Skeksis, but we only got two Uru in the show.
But man, the two that we got were great, though. I loved the Archer. Such a great character, and of course, and the Wanderer with the dynamic between him and the Heretic with where he'd be talking and the Heretic is all like, say it, just get it out.
Do you know what broke my heart a little bit? During the puppet show within the puppet show, where we got to see the miniature versions of the two of them hugging each other in this quiet little puppet embrace. It was so sad because the dialogue supports it and says every moment that we are separated between us hurts, so it hurts. And the other Skeksis are so driven to avoid what is inevitable. I would love to see what happens next. Everybody wants to see what happens next. There has to be another life for this story. There has to be. I think we're all in agreement on that. And Amazon Studios, and I know they've been listening, they watched my show, the live stream. Amazon, you got to know that The Lord of the Rings is not what Netflix did to the Dark Crystal. It is not one and done. You can't do that.
We talked about there are things to learn from the Dark Crystal, both good and bad, and the fact that Amazon could learn to and hopefully hopefully they have. We'll see about respecting what the fans want to see, what what the property is, but also making sure that they're in it for a long haul, that they don't do what Netflix ended up doing, which was say, okay, we're done.
How could you go from having so much faith in something and getting your award in a very, very difficult category? I mean, those young kids in the Martin Luther King documentary, using the power of his speeches to energize their view of the world, and the message was so powerful. It is a very tough category. In fact, it was so tough of a category that it was a tie, and they both got awarded that Emmy. And I'm telling you, they proved, the people who made the Age of Resistance and all of the many artisans, carpenters, and sculptors, and the wig makers, and costume makers, and all those people who worked so hard, they proved that they were like Faramir. Like Faramir, when Samwise and Faramir have this dialogue, they proved their quality.
Yeah.
A chance for Faramir, Prince of Gondor, to prove his quality? Well, they did. Everyone agrees that it deserves to live on. And if it comes down to licensing or whatever weird BS they need to get those things done, maybe there's a possibility that another feature film, or in years to come, another home can be found for the story. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Nah.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Look at me. I'm pontificating again, and I apologize.
No, it's great because I'm feeling all that stuff, and it's really tough because I keep bouncing back and forth between outrage and sort of disbelief and anger, but also cherishing what we got. And it's such a beautiful creation, and the fact that it brought me to Thra, that's very important to me, and I do believe that, let's say worst case scenario, and we never get anything more live action from this, which would be a tragedy.
Mm.
But
No, come on, those sets are built. Those physical assets are not burned down. They're in storage. They're there.
But
they are there.
I am saying that this 10-part masterpiece is a breathtaking, beautiful accomplishment. And I hope that the Jim Henson Company and all the performers, voice actors, and everybody who worked on this, including the people at Netflix, were very instrumental in getting this going, who were behind the project, who maybe were equally displeased with the ultimate decision to not press forward. I hope each and every one of those people are proud of what they accomplished here, because I'm in love with it. Ask anybody unfortunate enough to be listening to me over the past year. It's that I fell so in love with this show, and there's a reason why I've been buying stuff left and right. I've got like all of the Age of Resistance Funko Pops. And I don't buy those Funko Pops because it's a terrible way to clutter up your house. But
I've got one. I've got Skeksil over there. My roommate has Agra.
I had one sitting here, which is of Hup.
Hup!
I love all of these. And part of it is, just wanting. I didn't know back when I snatched those up that the show would be canceled, but there was a feeling of this is something really special, and I want to have all these mementos of it.
Agreed.
Yeah. And
Hodling Justista.
Exactly.
Right.
But yeah. Oh wait, here's Danny, thanks. There's a thing that everybody likes to say, that I'm never negative about anything, because my channel is usually about just endlessly praising the movies that I choose to talk about.
Yeah.
So even my outrage sounds like positivity.
I think the music will live on. I'm like one of the chatters earlier in the show said the music for Age of Resistance is stunning, and I can't tell you how quickly I'm going to grab my special vinyl when I can get it. And the show will live on. If we don't get a Blu-ray version, then there are ways around that. As long as we keep streaming it, we keep watching it, it's still trending. My Netflix interface just said today, trending now in the United States. There it is. So yeah, we can keep our energy going. And I know we're running out of time on the show now, but it is nice to have some optimism, and that's at the heart of Tolkien as well. Is that there is no time for despair. There's no time for that. No time for despair. There is hope. And even if Gandalf says, it might be a fool's hope, Peregrine Took. So we might have a fool's hope, but we still have it. We always have that.
Yeah, I did want to also say, because it was something I didn't mention earlier when I was running through like all the petitions and stuff, something that is being organized for that everybody can take part in, which is in December. On December 17th through the 20th, there's something that's called the Thra-a-thon, which is basically where everybody streams the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance that weekend.
Yes.
Again, December 17th through the 20th. So
and it rockets to the top 10.
Yeah, so we can get the show trending on Netflix, and so that they see that people are watching it. So mark that on your calendars one more time. That's December 17th through the 20th. Watch the heck out of the show.
Me too.
On those days. Because it's just, again, all about making sure that Netflix knows we still love the show, we're still watching it, and
it's comfort food. It's like, how many years and years I've been putting Fellowship of the Ring on my TV? as comfort food. Do you know it? All of us feel that way. We're like, oh, Lord of the Rings is on TNT. Drop everything. Wow. You know, it's the Age of Resistance is something that I have in the background. I have it on play and repeat all the time. It's comfort food to me, and it's such a wonderful place to exist. Hello, last one. How are you?
I do want to also, I have noticed a couple new names pop up periodically throughout the stream, and I really want to thank you guys for coming to tune in. I was hoping maybe we'd get a couple people that I hadn't seen before, because I did want Dark Crystal fans to come and see the stream, because I feel like we all kind of need this right now of just talking it out. Because it still hurts, you know, and I think it's going to for a while, but we can use that to, you know, as people in the chat would say about me, spin positivity. We can, we can fight for the future of the thing that we love.
Well, in the famous words of Deet, gentle Deetra, gentle Deet, she actually says to Hup, she says, I don't accept that.
Yeah.
She says, I don't accept that. I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to try. I'm willing to carry forward. And that was when Deet was channeling some real Frodo energy. It was really good. It was really good stuff. I want to find out what happens to her too. Oh my gosh, this has been such a great 2 hours to have a wonderful, rather granular conversation with you, my friends.
And the thing is, I actually, and as I started to, you know, start say things to try and draw it to close, I was thinking in my head, the truth is, we probably could just keep going and going and going, because I feel like we've had so much to talk about, and there's still so much more that I feel like we have inside that we'd want to say. But
why don't I return the favor and invite you to come onto my live stream show on Torn Tuesday, and sometime you can join us in the conversation there. That'd be great.
I would love that, and
I would too.
And thank you so much. It would be an honor, because I obviously I've been watching you guys for years, and you know, and Torn, the OneRing.net is really such a home to me, because I've been on the message boards as a lurker probably since like 2002, and then I started to get more engaged about 10 years ago on the boards. So it means a lot to me, and so I really want to thank you again for coming on, Cliff.
My friend, Melon is Elvish for friend. My friend, it was such this has really uplifted me, and it's been very enriching to meet everybody here and see them all online. Maybe when I schedule that interview finally with Hup, okay, and when I finally get him on the show, you can come in too. We can barrage him with questions.
Oh, that would be amazing.
It'd be so fun. Yeah, we'll probably have, you know, people come into the show left and right. Victor Yared is such a gentle soul, and he's really, 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 really funny. He's so funny. I got to tell you what, there's more to come. There's a lot of energy in the community of Thra, just as much as there's ongoing enthusiasm and energy in the Ringers fan community. So we're all together doing this, and it's a great experience. Hey, yeah, absolutely. Last one. If you guys want to follow us, you can follow us on, you know, on our platforms, the One Ring Net, on Instagram and Twitter, and our live show is just broadcast on every Tuesday afternoon at 5 o'clock Pacific time, 8 o'clock Eastern. And to all my friends in the United Kingdom, bless your heart for staying up till 1 a.m. to be part of our live show, because they do that. It's crazy. You're so awesome, Jen. I mean, I almost called you Jen. I almost called you Jen. You're awesome, Jen.
Yes, I almost called you Jen.
That's great. I love it. Before we sign off, I do want to say that tomorrow on Here Be Dragons at 6 o'clock Eastern, I'll be talking with Stephen Nessie, and I believe we're going to have a special guest about George R.R. Martin's story, The Sworn Sword, which is the second Duncan story. So make sure you all tune in for that. And then next week, on my channel, again at 6 o'clock Eastern, I'm going to have a wonderful panel of guests, including Lauren, aka Shakes of Thrones, the Jaded Redhead, otherwise known as Kelly, and my friend Laura P. And we're going to be talking about the film Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Billy Boyd fans, unite!
Yes.
All you Peregrine Took fans, unite, because Master and Commander is what a movie. Wow.
I always tell people, like, it's so funny that Master and Commander came out the same year as Return of the King, because like nothing would have ever stopped me from like rooting endlessly for Return of the King to win all those Oscars that it won. But Master and Commander was like the one movie that, you know, if it had won Best Picture, I would have been able to swallow it, because I love that movie so much. It's
so
fantastic.
Good. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
So good.
So before we go, is there anything else you want to mention about anything you're working on?
We're going to keep your eyes on the onering.net, because we're hearing weird rumbles in the distance about what's going on with a re-release of the 6 films. And more importantly, follow us, because there's breaking news about what Amazon is doing with their adaptation of the Second Age of Middle-earth. And there are interesting and perhaps troubling signs. We just heard, keep this under your hats, we just heard that they hired an intimacy coordinator for the actors. And we don't know what that means. Don't know what the heck that means. But there's something weird and fishy is going on in New Zealand. And, you know, as Agra would say, sometimes good, sometimes bad. And I guess we'll find out more later. So yeah, we'll just follow the news with us, and that theonering.net. My handle online is a Quickbeam 2000. Quickbeam, one of the young friends of Treebeard. His job was to babysit Merry and Pippin in the book, while Treebeard was busy doing other things. So and yeah, let's get ready for that Thra-a-thon. I want to be involved with an online group and do some of that marathon watching with everybody. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. I just want to say I've popped up theonering.net up on the screen. Guys, if you are even slightly interested in anything related to the Lord of the Rings, you have to immerse yourself in theonering.net. Their news reporting, the forums, which I often refer to the onering.net forums as like the purest place online, because it's such a wonderful community. And it has remained so throughout all these years.
Thank you.
Yeah. So make sure that you guys check them out. And yeah, and I've got Cliff's Twitter information in the description. So just go down there and you'll find it.
We had a really good online San Diego Comic-Con panel, because we could not meet together in real person in San Diego. So the archive is available on YouTube. If you are on the YouTube and you're looking at SDCC, San Diego Comic-Con online, you can see the panel presentation that I hosted with Tolkien scholar John Garth, who wrote Tolkien and the Great War. Which inspired the beautiful film Tolkien, which had Lily Collins and Nicholas Hoult. It came out last year from Fox Searchlight. But yeah, there's all kinds of content out there. Everyone is really excited, and the rumblings of the fandom are starting to get
more and more energetic. So come along with us on this journey. It's going to be great.
Okay, guys, thank you for tuning in. And even though I've said it a million times, thank you again, Cliff, for coming on. I had a great time. This was fantastic.
You, sir, you, John, are a gentleman and a scholar. Thank you very much. I appreciate you very much, my friend.
Thank you. All right, guys, have a wonderful evening. And I'm sure I'll see a bunch of you tomorrow and see you next week for Master and Commander as well.
Until then, Namarie.
Bye.
Bye.